Okay, so I just wanted to share with you a nice idea on the parsha. I'm not sure what participation you've had with previous classes this week and what you may have heard, but something that was personally, I guess, meaningful to me when I came across this idea. So before I begin, I want to just dedicate this class to, number one, as a merit for a speedy recovery to Avraham ben Sarah, that is Rabbi Trevitsky's father, who's unfortunately right now in critical condition. So the Torah study today among us should be a merit for him. And number two is Lahavdil ben Chaim L'chaim. My great-grandfather, his yahrzeit was today. My son is named after him, Yehuda Leib ben Yaakov Yitzchak, and today's Torah study should be a merit for a merit of his soul. Okay, so this week's parsha is called. It's a double parsha. We have two parshas: the parsha of Tazria and the parsha of Mitzorah. And in the parsha of Mitzorah, the primary topic is the Mitzorah. Mitzorah is a person who gets a skin disease called Sara'at. Now, many English commentators like to translate the malady of Sara'at as leprosy. Sara'at was basically a skin disease that covered parts of a person's body. It could have covered their entire body. It could even cover parts of their clothing and or their homes. So there's many reasons why this cannot be the physical ailments of Sara'at that we know of leprosy that we know of today. And Rabbi Samson Raphael Hirsch brings a number of proofs to show us that it can't be that. And one of them, interestingly, is if there is a bride and groom who just got married. So let me back it up a little bit. So why would a person contract this disease of Sara'at, this disease that's commonly translated as leprosy? So the Talmud gives a number of reasons, but one of the main reasons is for the sin of Lashon Hara, the sin of speaking negatively about other people, spreading gossip. In fact, one commentator writes that the word Mitzorah is a contraction of the words Motzi Ra, which means they're spreading evil thoughts, evil ideas among people, spreading gossip. So someone will contract this disease as a result of that. Now, in a harrowing relation to what's happening now, a Mitzorah, someone who contracts this disease, the first thing that has to happen is he has to be quarantined. He has to be isolated. He can't be around any other people. Now, the concern, which is the reason that we isolate and quarantine him, is not because of contagion. We're not concerned that he's going to infect other people with his germ. The reason is because we want this person to be in isolation, to think about why he may have gotten this disease. The Talmud gives other reasons why he could have gotten it, but thinking about it should be a reflection on his behavior, what's happening, and hopefully cause him to mend his ways. Now, if this Mitzorah, this person who contracted this disease, was actually physically contagious, if he was infected with a germ that was contagious and we were concerned it would go viral, there would be many laws that apply to this person that would not apply. For example, if one is a bride or a groom and they had just gotten married and they see on their arm or on their clothing they got this disease. So if we were concerned with someone being contagious, we would say, all right, call off the wedding. In my personal life, tonight on April 23rd, I was supposed to be dancing at my sister's wedding. Unfortunately, the wedding couldn't take place tonight because of obvious reasons. But imagine if a chatan or a kala, a bride or groom, contracts this ailment of Sara'at, and they would go to the kohen, who would be the decider if this person actually had this ailment or not. he would say, listen, you're a bride, you're a groom, you're in a very celebratory state of your life right now. We're not going to even talk about this. Come back in 2 weeks when the party's over. Now, obviously, if this was a physical, contagious disease, then it doesn't matter what's going on. We're going to call your wedding off. So that's just one of the many proofs that Rabbi Hirsch has to illustrate that this is not your typical ailment. So we have this unfortunate situation where the person contracted this disease. And the first thing happens, like we said, he's isolated, he's quarantined, he's sent out of the camp, and he's there to contemplate his ways. After a certain amount of time, there's a 3-step purification process. And the first thing that happens is the Kohen goes to him. He's outside the camp, remember, he's isolated. The Kohen goes to him, and he inspects. And if the Kohen sees that it's very possible this person is on his way to recovery, then what this person does is he has to take 2 birds. And it doesn't have to be any specific kinds of birds, but 2 birds. They just have to be kosher birds. And what he does with these birds is one of them is killed, and the other one is set free. And it's interesting that there are other offerings or sacrifices that do apply in the Torah where birds can be the sacrifice, but it's never 2 birds, and never do we have this concept of 1 bird staying alive and 1 bird being killed. So what is this idea of birds, 2 birds, and 1 being killed, 1 staying alive? So interestingly, Rashi quotes a medrash that says that the reason why we use birds in this situation is because birds chirp, or in common vernacular, birds tweet. And tweeting is just yapping on and on and on and on, and that is really the sin, the cause of Lashon Hara, of speaking negatively. And therefore, we bring 2 birds to represent that sin. But there's a fascinating thing that's quoted that the Zohar says. The Zohar was written by Rabbi Shimon Bar Yochai, who was one of the greatest leaders after the death of the 24,000 students of Rabbi Akiva, which were mourning at this time, hence the beard. So Rabbi Shimon Bar Yochai was one of the 6 remaining disciples of Rabbi Akiva, and he brought Torah study to an entirely new level. He brought out what's called Sod, what's called Kabbalah, the hidden secrets of the Torah. And in that book of Zohar, Rabbi Shimon Bar Yochai says something fascinating. He says that the sin of a mitzora, someone who speaks negatively, is on 2 accounts. Number 1, obviously, for the words that he spoke. But number 2, says the Zohar, is he's getting punishment for the nice words that he did not speak. So it's not only Lashon Hara, and I'm sure we hear throughout our classes, throughout anybody's Torah study, we hear a lot about Lashon Hara, and it is a very big deal. But there's a whole other concept over here, which is, besides for not speaking words which should not be spoken, speaking negatively about other people, spreading gossip, what about the words, complimentary words, words that make people feel good, words that can lift people up? For failing to say those words, that's a terrible sin. So says the Zohar that there are 2 birds here because there's 2 things. There's negative words that were not spoken, there's negative words that were spoken, Lashon Hara that was spoken, and there are positive words that were not spoken. And this idea I saw quoted in the Sfas Emes. The Sfas Emes was written by one of the great Hasidic rabbis, the Rabbi of Gur, known as the Ger Rabbi, and he quotes a verse that says that Achayim v'hamavet biyad halashon, that life and death are in the hands of the tongue. And there's a fascinating story that's obviously an analogy, not a true story, that's quoted in the Talmud, and it goes as follows. So there was a king who was deathly ill. The doctors feared for his life. There was no hope for this king, and his top advisors, his doctors, said the only thing that's a ray of hope for you in this sickness is you need to get a hold of a lioness's milk. If you can get a lioness's milk, that's going to be your cure. A lioness's milk. How do you get a lioness's milk? These are dangerous animals. So the king puts out a statement throughout the kingdom. Whoever gets the king lioness's milk is going to be awarded with riches and status and everything good for your entire life. So there's this one fellow who decides he's going to be the savior of the king. He's going to get this lioness's milk. He's going to venture out into the jungle, and he'll be the savior, and he'll be the one to be awarded all those riches. So he goes out, he prepares, he does some Googling, how to get a lioness, how to get her milk, and sure enough, he manages to go out into the forest, into the jungle, and he manages to get himself a bottle full of lioness's milk. And on his way back to the palace, he's excited. A fight breaks out. An argument breaks out between the limbs of his body. And the feet said, I really am the most important one in this body. Because if not for my feet to take us to the forest, to go and get the lioness's milk, we wouldn't be here. And the hands say, no, it's not you, it's me, because I had to carry out all these skillful acts to be able to calm the lioness down and to get the bottle, to be able to get the milk from her. And the brain says, no, I'm the most important part of the body because I thought of this idea. And they're having this whole argument until the tongue speaks up. And the tongue says, you guys are all wrong. I, the tongue, am the most important part of the human body, and I'm going to prove it to you. Okay, prove it to us. So the tongue says, just wait and see. So they come to the king, and the guards say, what do you want? I got the bottle of lioness's milk for the king. And this person comes, he's immediately ushered into the king's inner throne room, and the king says, I've heard you've come with my cure with the lioness's milk. And the person says, here is your bottle of dog's milk. And you can see the color on the king's face turning colors. He turns into a fit of rage. Is that what you think of me? Making a mockery out of me, making a mockery out of my kingdom? Hang him. And two guards grab him, one by each arm, and sure enough, they start walking up to the gallows. And as he's being taken to the gallows, the tongue says to the rest of the body, you see, guys? Where did your feet take us? Where did your arms take us? Where did your cunning brain take us? It's taking us to the gallows. My tongue is the most powerful part of the human body. So obviously, they're all at they're speechless, and they say, okay, so yes, you're the most powerful. Now, how are you going to get us out of this mess? And tongue says, you watch, I'll get us out of this mess. And before they kick the chair from under this person hanging by the noose, because I have one more thing I want to say to the king. Okay, well, we'll give you a last word to the king. So please tell the king that it's actually a lioness's milk. But where I come from, we call lioness a dog. That's why I said it's a dog's milk. But you take it, you could test it, you could see it's lioness's milk. And sure enough, they take it and they test it, and they see it's lioness's milk, and this person is granted life. So, literally, life and death are in the hands of the tongue. Now, very often we talk about lashon hara, we speak about negative speech, or we shouldn't speak. But it's also important to focus on the positive, what we should be doing. Sometimes when we focus too much on what shouldn't be done, or how bad things would be if one went down this path, very often we kind of miss the mark. I remember when I was probably in 7th grade, I think it was my first summer away at sleepaway camp. I think that was the first time that we found out that deodorant cans were flammable. So our counselors warned us, do not ever bring your deodorant cans near a burning fire. So obviously the first thing that we did, a bunch of 7th graders, was we went out and we bought deodorant cans, and we lit a huge bonfire in the back of our bunkhouse. Because sometimes when you tell people things that they shouldn't do, it doesn't come across nearly as effective as telling people what they should do. So as the Zohar writes, we are all held accountable for the nice words, complimentary words, words that can build a person up that we don't say. So there are always people that we come across people maybe in our own homes, people in the course of our work, family members, that would benefit so much, would benefit so greatly just from a nice compliment, a good word. Wow, you did that so nicely. You're so good at X, Y, and Z. I'm so happy to have you on my team. And something like that can really change a person's mood. It can build a person up. It could change their day. It could even change their entire life. And I'm sure if you think back into your history, into your lives, you could probably think of people that may have said something that either tore you down or maybe even built you up. And I'm going to share with you something very personal about my life, about how someone's words made such a profound impact on me. So many of you have had the chance to have met my parents. Thank God I'm fortunate to come from two very, very special people, and I share a very close and warm relationship with both my father and my mother. I want to tell you a story that happened, and if I have to pinpoint a time in my life when I started building a trusting relationship with my father, I would say it goes back to this episode. And I remember this episode as clear as day. It was in my first year of high school in 9th grade. And I was a regular kid. You can call me rambunctious, you can call me curious, but I was a kid. I was wanted to explore the world, see what was out there. And I was busted in my first year of high school doing something that I shouldn't have done. I'm not going to tell you what it is because it's very personal, but I was busted doing something I shouldn't have done. And it was really bad, and I felt terrible about it. And I didn't know what was going to happen to me as a result, but I felt very, very bad about it. And that night I came home from school, and I didn't say anything to my parents. I ate dinner. I maybe did some homework, and my parents went to sleep, and I went to my room. And it was bothering me very much, and I knew it was going to get out. I knew it was going to go to the staff of the school. The principal was going to hear about it, but it was just really bothering me. So I went to my parents' room, and I knocked on my parents' door, and I asked my father if I could speak with him for a minute. And he said, sure, no problem. He was ready to go to bed, and he comes out of his room, and he says, what is it? So I said, I want to tell you something that happened today, something I feel really bad about. It was a big mistake, and I'm definitely not going to do it again, but I really feel bad about it, and I think you should know about it. And I told him what I did. And I remember the exact words he said to me when I finished saying it. He said, wow, it must have been so hard for you to tell me that. And it was. It was very, very hard for me to say that to my father. And I remember that feeling of validation, of someone understands, okay, I made a mistake. And a different person or parent may have said, you did what? How could you have done such a thing? Don't you know I trust you? Don't you know you're in 9th grade already? And I could see somebody, I could see myself being very hard on a person like that. But my father, in his wisdom and his sensitivity, he said to me, wow, it must have been so hard for you to tell me that. And then he went on to berate me. No, I'm joking. He didn't do that. But just when I saw how much he understood, how I was hurting, I was in pain, and I didn't want to be where I was, and I found myself in an unfortunate situation, that opened up an open relationship between me and my father that, thank God, I still have until today. Every one of us can think back in their lives, think of teachers, think of friends, think of colleagues, of coworkers, of spouses that have said something to them that either built them up or tore them down. And we're all home with each other. We're not seeing many new people in our lives these days. Some of us may be going a little stir crazy, a little bit of cabin fever. But if we could take on one thing, coming up to the days of Shavuos, where we re-accepted Torah and we're in a upward process of counting the Omer, trying to build on ourselves to grow, I think this is the idea. This is one really special idea, to try and compliment people. Or if you want to make it into an exercise, compliment one person a day, 7 people a week, to give out compliments, and you'll see, or you can ask people, what do you feel when you hear this? What were some important things that I've told you in your life that maybe made you feel good, or something to try to build somebody up and to set them on an easier path. The sources tell us that Hashem gave the mother a softer voice and a more pleasant attitude, because they're the ones who are the primary teachers of discipline to the children. And Hashem felt it important that the children should be spending their time with a mother whose voice is soft, whose voice is calm, whose voice is pleasant, because the words that go into their ears, the softer they are and the more pleasant they are, the greater impact they can possibly have. So we have our tongues, one of the most powerful tools that we have. And as the verse says, life and death is in the hand of the tongue. So a Metzora, the person who spoke negatively about other people, he takes these two birds, and what does he do with them? One of them he lets live, and one of them he kills. One of them he kills because with the words of Lashon Hara that he's spoken, he could have killed somebody, he could have torn somebody down. And he has to remember that this bird is going to die because I could have killed somebody's attitude. I could have killed their excitement. I could have killed their friendship. I could have killed something, and this bird is going to represent that. But then he takes another bird, and this bird is going to be sent off, and anybody who finds it can eat it. It's a kosher bird. And the idea is that with words that are building, words that are positive, we can set somebody asoar. We can set somebody to fly like a bird and let them soar to the highest heights that they've never been to before. And that's why we have these two birds. And giving compliments sometimes is not so easy. Sometimes we feel like, why would I give that person a compliment? I'm going to feed their ego. They're such a proud person. Why would I want to feed that? But really, giving compliments is an exercise. It's something that we can train ourselves to do, something that we can become better at over time. And people want to be around positive people. And I'll end up with one story. And beyond that, if anyone wants to chime in or go for a little schmooze, I'm definitely down for that. So this story is about a person by the name of Chaim, ironically. Chaim, which we know now means life. Now this fellow, Chaim, he lived in Israel, and Chaim was a child cancer survivor. And Chaim he had leukemia as a child. The doctors didn't think that he was going to make it, and he ended up living. And when Chaim became an older gentleman, he decided he was going to create a movement, an organization, to help families with children of cancer. Sure enough, Chaim built an organization, and he named the organization after his name, which means life. So it was the very first anniversary dinner of this organization, and obviously it was a big fundraising dinner, and a lot of people there, a lot of guests there, a lot of the families that the organization had helped out over the previous year, and they were honoring the work of Chaim and everything the organization had done. So the first speaker to come to the podium is obviously the CEO, Chaim. Chaim comes to the podium and he says, I want to welcome everybody to the first annual dinner. It's an honor to have you here. We thank you so much for your support over the year. And thanks to you, we've been able to help X amount of families and so on and so forth. And he said, the first tribute I want to give out this evening is to a doctor. And before I call up this doctor, I want to tell you a story about this doctor. So this doctor is actually my doctor, Chaim says. I remember very clearly, as a young child, I went in for my cancer treatment, and I walk into the office, I walk into Dr. Cohn's office. And as I'm walking into his office, out from the office comes another child. So the child walking out just finished his appointment, and he's leaving. Now I'm coming in with my mother from my appointment. And I walk into the room, and the doctor turns to his nurse. And this is in Israel, the doctor says in Hebrew, he says, Ter'i, Eze Gever, which means, look, what a Gever. In Hebrew, Gever means like a big guy. It's like you call someone like, you're a big guy, you got this, you're a strong kid. So she turns to the nurse and says, Ter'i, Eze Gever. And those are the words that Chaim heard. Those are the words that made such a profound impact on him. And he's thinking, you know what? I'm a strong kid. I could do this. The doctor thinks I'm a gever. He thinks I'm a gever. He told the nurse I'm a gever. I'm a gever. I got this. I can do this. And Chaim went on to relate how through every treatment, through all his chemo, whatever he had to go through, he kept telling himself, I can do this because I'm a gever. I can do this. Dr. Cohen thinks I'm a gever. And sure enough, Chaim says, Dr. Cohen, I want to call you up to the podium. I want to give you this tribute. And I want to thank you for calling me a gever. It got me through all of my challenges. So Dr. Cohen comes up to the podium to receive his award, and Dr. Cohen is white like a ghost. And Dr. Cohen comes to the mic and he says, before I accept anything, I have to share with you my end of the story. And Dr. Cohen says, I remember so clearly the day, Chaim, that you walked into my office. And I remember very clearly that when you walked in, there was another boy walking out. And that boy also had cancer. When I told the nurse, Ter'i, Eza Gever, look what a big guy, I wasn't even talking about you. I was talking about that other child. You, there wasn't even any hope. I wouldn't have even said such a thing to you. I was talking about the other kid. The idea is, there's many ideas we could take from this story, but words which weren't even meant to Chaim, they weren't meant to give him confidence, they weren't meant to give him strength. Obviously, Hashem wanted him to hear those words, and those words Chaim attributed to his life vest, to the thing that saved his life. The words that we have are powerful. They're potent. They're strong, and they can be the source of life for somebody, and God forbid the source of harm for somebody. An idea from the parsha we want to take away is we look around and try to use this power of the tongue that we have to impact other people, to build them up, and to make them like that bird that can fly and go to greater heights. Have a good Shabbos, everybody.